You know, wedding planning can seem like a lot, maybe even too much. That's why Simply Eloped is here to make it easy and deeply human. They've planned over 14,000 personalized ceremonies in 37 stunning U.S. destinations, and they coordinate every detail that's important to you with real care. You just bring your marriage license and, well, they'll take care of the rest. Your love deserves simplicity. Visit simplyeloped.com. You might know that Las Vegas was once known as the Atomic City, but how did our obsession with all things atomic arise, and when did it start to get, well, a little more complicated? So today on CityCast Las Vegas, as we look back on Las Vegas history at the end of the year, we're bringing back a conversation I had with Matt Malinowski from the Atomic Museum about our city's nuclear history. It's Monday, December 29th. I'm Dayvid Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Matt, what was our city's relationship with nuclear testing like at the beginning?
So in 1951, Nevada does its first atomic test. The very first test at the Nevada test site, which had just been formed a few months before. You know, the city itself was already known for its close proximity to Boulder Dam, this other really big, engineering marvel. And so Vegas adapted to this new nuclear testing site. And by 1952, they were broadcasting these detonations out the test site. There were journalists set up there at the specific place that they referred to as News Knob. And they started to promote it. Eventually, our city gives itself the moniker, the Atomic City. And atomic tourism really becomes an integral part of Las Vegas's culture and the city itself.
Yeah, so basically turning lemons into radioactive lemonade. But how did it go over as a marketing tool for Vegas?
For Vegas, it added this other extra level of mystery, which our city has kind of always carried forward. People were very intrigued by this new form of energy. There was a lot of pride and patriotism at the time as well with what this had done to help end World War II. So this was spectacle. And again, Vegas embraced it with atomic bomb watching viewing parties that they threw. There was the specialty cocktails, the atomic cocktail, which was like a fizzy champagne drink where people would stay up all night long with, having these special types of cocktails and waiting for these early morning detonations, which in the 50s were probably there's probably a detonation every maybe 4 or 5 weeks or so.
Wow.
So this was a regular occurrence kind of once it gained its momentum within our city.
And the Atomic Museum has tons of those photos, which just blows my mind that people are just kind of sitting on rooftops staring into the belly of the mushroom cloud. It's really wild.
That's right. It was incredible that for some of these detonations, you could see it from downtown Las Vegas, or if you were up on the top of Mount Charleston, that was another kind of sought out vantage point for a lot of people where they could go and see those.
That's where I would go.
Up to
even
the
not knowing what the science was, I would feel like a little more comfortable being farther away with a good vantage point.
So if you were an invited journalist or guest actually out at the Nevada test site, for most of those folks, they would sit you down on these just wooden benches that were just a few miles away from wherever ground zero was going to be for that detonation. So you would just watch actually from within the test site itself.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And one of my favorite photos from that era was a Miss Atomic mushroom cloud or something, just sort of a showgirl wearing a mushroom cloud outfit. Just so iconic, but also ridiculous, which, that's Vegas. Did celebrities come in for this for this spectacle as well? Because that kind of goes hand in hand with the Vegas approach. Is you call in the celebrities to kind of bring a little name recognition to the city.
Well, sure. So again, having those kind of bigger names, there was certainly going to be a larger draw. So there's pictures of Zsa Zsa Gabor with flamingo executives at this society that they created. They call it the Ancient Honorable Society of Atom Bomb Watchers at the Flamingo Hotel. Yeah, so they made their own.
Tell me about this society. Was it a secret society? What was this?
I mean, really, I feel like it was more just a group of journalists who were always together for these detonations, and they decided to kind of be a little tongue-in-cheek, I guess, and create this fictitious society. But it was still, they would get together. They had little signs and like membership ID cards, and supposedly you had to know the secret password, which was Simoda, which was atomic backwards, to get into these parties. So.
Wow. Okay. All right. But that's Vegas lore, right? And well, Zsa Zsa Gabor was there, so it had to be cool. I mean, Zsa Zsa Gabor in the day, she was probably only on husband number 3 back then.
Probably.
Out of, I think, 8. You could Google me on that.
At the museum, we talk a lot about how atomic pop culture came to rise too, especially like in the 40s and 50s.
I mean, it's so fascinating to me.
Yeah, I mean, think about any, comic book hero or villain or sidekick, and they're probably either radioactive or they've got like, their enemy that's like that. But yeah, so we had this whole big pop culture influence from everything from music to movies to TV to foods. I mean, atomic fireballs are still a candy you can find in the candy stores, still out and about.
Well, and there's a whole style of furnishings that's the atomic style, from mid-century.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep, that like mid-century modern type of look. So of course, so all this influence from this futuristic age. One of my favorite artifacts that we have here right now is actually on loan. It's the Ford Nucleon. It's Ford's concept car from 1958 that they thought was going to have this mini little nuclear reactor on the back that was going to allow you to kind of zip around town. Yeah,
I'd love to see that in a spaghetti bowl.
But again, a great example of this like forward-thinking futuristic movement that came from this word atomic at that particular moment in time.
Meet Nevada HealthLink, Nevada's official health insurance marketplace. Your link to new plans, more selection, free assistance, and name brand health insurance all bundled together. Our marketplace is growing and has the state's widest selection of quality health plans. Find savings and quality coverage regardless of your income with new state-approved battle-born state plans. Visit NevadaHealthLink.com. In a few minutes, you can find the health plan that's right for you.
Nevada HealthLink. Our plans are made for your plans.
Conoce Nevada HealthLink, el mercado oficial de seguros médicos de Nevada. Tu lugar para encontrar opciones, ayuda en español y seguros de salud a tu alcance. Estamos creciendo y tenemos la mayor variedad de planes en el estado. Encuentra planes a tu alcance sin importar tus ingresos con los nuevos Battleborn State Plans aprobados por el estado. Visita NevadaHealthLink.com y en solo minutos encontrarás el seguro de salud que necesitas y mereces.
Nevada HealthLink. Our plans are made for your plans.
All right, so Vegas is loving this. People are coming here. Atomic tourism is a thing. Great photos for history, but that started to change. Tell us about when that happened. When does this the attitude towards atomic testing above ground in just outside Las Vegas start to change?
Well, I think for Las Vegas, again, the test site was right here, was employing a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And so there was still a lot of pride and patriotism in what was going on out at the test site for local Las Vegas residents. But I would say by mid-1960s, you have this partial test ban treaty that goes into effect for a lot of different reasons. But basically, the United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union agree that they can no longer test in the atmosphere. And when we think of atmospheric tests, that's when we're actually seeing mushroom clouds, right? So these big iconic mushroom clouds kind of go away. And then this shift, I think, in Las Vegas culture, kind of goes away from atomic tourism because you can't see it anymore. All the testing goes underground for the next 828 tests until 1992. Yeah. So there were actually 928 nuclear tests at the test site.
And growing up here in Las Vegas, I do recall that it was still a big deal when an underground test would happen in the 70s and 80s. And I think we all pretended we could always feel it. I'm not sure that we always could.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you see that. And then you also see this rise kind of at the same time of this other movement to find peaceful applications for nuclear weapons technology. So this was a movement that began in the 1950s and kind of spans throughout the 70s. Called Project Plowshare. And then there's other derivatives of this too. But Project Plowshare was looking for if you could use nuclear weapons to extract natural gas, if you could find resources with it, mineral resources, if you could use it for excavation purposes. In fact, out at the test site, there's the Sedan crater. It was one of the larger tests that was done out there. It was a 100 kiloton blast that created a 320 foot deep crater. That's
oh my gosh.
Yeah, 1,200 feet in diameter. And then even there was the nuclear rocket development station. So they were testing nuclear application of rocketry for space travel, for human space travel out there too. So this, again, weapons testing is still going on, but they're also looking at different ways to utilize this technology that might be a better benefit for humanity.
Yeah, so basically turning radioactive lemonade into rocket fuel.
Yes, you could say that.
Well, Project Plowshare, that reference, I'm no biblical scholar, but do you know where that comes from?
It's a biblical reference, yeah. Okay. So there's a passage that says to beat their swords into plowshares, right? Something like that. But yeah, it is a biblical reference to take your weapons, set your weapons down, and instead go towards prosperity.
So I still sense that despite the hesitations and some of these things like the limitations, the movement to underground, et cetera, that there was still, a sustained optimism to it. But then I recall in the 1980s, specifically, the protests started getting wider spread, more intense. Out at the Nevada test site, I remember news accounts of famous people, Chris Christopherson and Martin Sheen and others, who were getting arrested out at the test site. Was that the start of a more skeptical relationship our city has had with nuclear testing?
I think that's fair to say. Again, the late 80s, there was all this tension that really came from, this renewed Cold War that kind of starts, I guess, in the late 70s and continues on. But you also have to think that you have 3 Mile Island that happens in 1979, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then the Chernobyl explosion in 1986. So just nuclear was in the forefront of a lot of people's minds at that point too, and it was something that people formed their own opinions about. And in the later 80s, there were the largest protests that the Nevada test site ever had occurred at that particular period. And yeah, Chris Christopherson, Martin Sheen, even Carl Sagan was arrested a few times out there as well. There's a lot of tension in the United States. And I would say that nuclear, with its kind of track record at that point in time, just made a lot of people very wary of it.
So that kind of brings us to the next big, let's say, flashpoint in Nevada politics, especially, and that's Yucca Mountain. And I think it's safe to say that most Las Vegans view nuclear testing with a lot more wariness than the Las Vegans of the 1950s. So how do you describe our city's relationship with atomic energy today, Matt?
Today, that's a difficult one. I mean, even for me working at the museum here, I think that it's great that we have the museum here in town to kind of give this history that's here. And also, we do talk a little bit about what's going on today out in the Nevada test site. Now, of course, the folks out there, that test site is still operated by the Nevada National Security Sites. And so they would be better to speak to that. But there's still a few thousand people that work out that test site that are still basically doing what's called stockpile stewardship. So ensuring that the nation's nuclear weapons would still function the way they need to function if they were needed. And so, I think it's accepted. I think that folks here in town know that the test site is down the road. They're not doing any active, major tests. They do these things called subcritical tests, where they can test small pieces of the radioactive material to see how it would behave. So it's a much safer way of them to be able to get the same result from what they would have done for a large, explosion back in the 1950s or 60s, right? So now they're able to use this really great science and modeling to do this exact same thing. So I think a lot of Las Vegas locals, and this, our city can be kind of transient. I think a lot of people just don't even know that site exists as well. There's plenty of people that don't even know that history. And that's, again, a great reason why to come down to the museum.
And I think I have to acknowledge that the impact of that above ground testing wasn't just on Las Vegas, that the downwinders, people who were literally downwind in places like Utah, were being impacted. The Atomic Museum, while they don't take a position on these kind of bills, certainly has a lot of information about the downwinders. So how do the downwinders fit into the ongoing story of atomic testing?
Right. Yeah. Those are conversations that the museum, and stories that the museum does share and plans to expand on the amount and the viewpoints that we share on them in the future. But yes, in the early days in the 1950s in atmospheric testing, the thought was that most of the fallout would remain over in the Nevada test site. Of course, now we know that some of that actually did drift to northern Nevada, to southern Utah. And so there was inherent risk with this. This was cutting edge science at the time. I always think back to the fact that the Trinity test, Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project, that first test happens in July of 1945. And then just 3 weeks later, the United States applies it in war and uses it in Japan, right? So again, this is really fast moving kind of science. And yes, there was risk. There was exposure risk for folks. There's a whole story about atomic soldiers, this group of people that were out at a place called Camp Desert Rock at the test site that were soldiers that would have to do maneuvers while these tests were going off. So yeah, I really think, in the very beginning, the science was new. They weren't sure how it was going to act. And again, with the geopolitical situations going on in the world, they were just looking to learn as much as they could, as fast as they could, and maybe not quite considering all the implications to that. That certainly changed, and the testing got safer, and the weapons themselves that, they say that they use the terminology that they were cleaner weapons, which means that they were producing less radiation, right? So that shifts over time. But yeah, in the very beginning, there was definitely risk for downwind and exposure.
Yeah, and that risk was health risks and ties to cancer, et cetera. And again, the Atomic Museum does a great job of not hiding from that. As much as you sort of celebrate the technology and the culture, you don't shy away from the downside.
What's great is that as a museum, we're talking a lot more. Like I mentioned earlier too, we're talking a lot more about how to bring this expanded story out, because the museum in its current state too does a great job at sharing the history and talking about the development of the weapons. But yeah, we want to bring out these more personal stories and really, more viewpoints on what happened in history, how it affected different people. So those are things that we're aiming to address.
Yeah, and very important. And of course, the Downwinder story is part of it. And RICA funding first came late in the game, kind of 1990 was when that entered into the conversation. So that's definitely something that is inspiring the museum for new exhibits in the future.
That's right. Absolutely.
Awesome. Hey, Matt, before we go, I understand there's an exhibit that you were heavily involved with over at the Atomic Museum. Tell us what that's about.
Yeah, so we opened Atomic Odyssey, which is this really immersive, experiential, just kind of cool little dive into nuclear science. So we share a lot of history here at the museum, and we didn't want our visitors to feel disconnected from the actual science with that too. So it's kind of like a crash course into the basics of an atom, what nuclear reactions are, like fission and fusion, and how radiation is involved in our universe. And we did that through interactive technologies. There's also art immersed in this exhibit. So there's these really interesting lenticular pieces of art that move with you as well. And yeah, it's a great opportunity for guests and students and anyone who's intrigued by this to kind of either come get a little refresher on the science or come and engage with it in a way that's fun and approachable.
Well, let me ask this as kind of the closing question, Matt. If someone were writing a book about the development of atomic weapons and energy 100 years from now, looking back, what would they say about Las Vegas? Assuming it's a good scholar person who is also a good writer. So yeah, I'll give you all that.
I mean, I think that they're obviously going to address the fact that Las Vegas was pretty much the headquarters for nuclear testing here in the United States, right? That this piece of land that's about 80 miles north or so of the city itself was a place that was a pivotal piece of land for the Cold War, with this back and forth between the Soviet Union and all these different types of weapon development. And I think that they'll also say that it did have an impact on our city's growth, on our city's attitudes, the culture here, even the architecture, like we mentioned before, and just the overall mystery of our city.
Well, I will tell you this, in 100 years, if it's still standing, and I assume it will, they could do that book release party at Atomic Liquors over on Fremont Street.
They could, absolutely.
All right. Well, if science solves the problem of mortality, I'll meet you there, Matt.
You got
Matt
it.
Malinowski from the Atomic Museum, thanks so much for joining us today on CityCast Las Vegas.
Yeah, this was fun. Thanks, David.
And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, hey, go tell a friend. You could also rate the show, leave us a review. That's a nice holiday treat. And subscribe to our morning newsletter. Don't forget, you could support this show and get some great perks by becoming a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky.
But again, still like in the 50s here in Vegas, we had Las Vegas High School's yearbook in 1953 had a mushroom cloud on the cover of it. So we were still embracing this atomic tourism thing, I would say probably until
and
about
that yearbook editor is still glowing today.